Today we're going to be talking about one of the most important concepts in bonsai.
Ice bucket challenge!
That would be watering. By far the most important thing to understand about watering is when you need to water. It's true that beginners who lose trees in the first few years lose them because of improper watering. The best time to water is going to be in the evening as the sun is going down. Now this doesn't matter what time of year it is or where you are. Now, the reasoning behind this is it gives the trees the longest period to absorb water without having to interact with sunlight. The second best time to do this is in the early morning, usually before the temperatures start to go up. So we're talking in most of the world, most of the year, this is before 10 a.m. Now, you can do either of these with pretty much the same success, but you have to choose one or the other. You cannot water in the morning one day and in the evening the next. If you consider that if you water in the morning every day, your tree is going without water for about 24 hours. If you keep switching it up, well, you're giving your tree a very irregular watering schedule, and it is becoming very difficult for it to understand how much water or if it's going to get water again. This will cause the tree to become unhealthy, decline, and eventually die. Now, what we're going to learn now is what we call a moisture test. The first thing you need to do is take a wooden stick. It can be a pencil, it can be a chopstick, and you want to jab it into the center area of the pot. We're going to let it sit for a few minutes, and while that happens, I'm going to tell you a few more things you need to understand about watering. First off, you never want to water in the summer during a warmer part of the day. What that can do, if you consider that all bonsai pots are in ceramic containers, it's like a little brick oven, and you can actually cook the roots. Now, if you water in the coldest part of the night, or even the coldest part of the day, early morning in the winter or in a colder environment, you can cause the water to freeze, which can damage the pot, the surface roots, the outer layer of bark, and also the foliage, especially if you have a tree that's not used to that kind of freezing temperature. Now, if we look closely at our stick now, we can tell that it's become quite wet, which means that this tree is well watered and that it is going to do pretty well. Another thing is if you smell this and it smells like pond scum, that's an indicator of root rot, which we'll talk about a little bit later. When watering, you have to consider several factors, one of which is the size of the pot. Pots that are this size are what are considered to be shohin or mame, which is the smallest sizes of pot. Now they can hold significantly less water than larger pots. The other thing to consider is that this is the entire world to the tree. They can absorb no more water that's inside this pot. It doesn't matter if you meant to water more or if you watered the tree next to it over and there's a puddle. It can only absorb what's in its pot. Now consider that when you water. Trees that are in larger pots are going to absorb more water. Trees that are in smaller pots have to be watered more often because they can only hold on to so much water. Now, the amount of sunlight or the amount of heat also makes a big difference. Trees that are in full sun typically lose water quicker. When it's a hotter day, let's say over 85, you should water. Now, in a lot of places, in a lot of states, that means you're watering every day. In California, we water almost every day in the spring, summer, and even a large portion of the fall. Typically speaking, if it's under about 75 degrees, you can water once every 3 days. Now, if it's significantly less than that, or if the tree is dormant, you want to be watering a lot less. Now, in the winter, if you have a deciduous tree and it's already lost all of its leaves, you're really just keeping the roots alive. And by that I mean you water it just about as often as it's raining, which for us usually means about once a week. Now, there are always bad days. When it's hot and windy, you water more often and deeper, especially on a hot and windy day, which can be the true killer of trees. There's basically two ways to water bonsai. The first is topically, which means you spray the soil down from above. You generally do this very slowly, and you stop when water starts coming out of the bottom. You have to be very careful not to knock any of the soil out. Now, you'll notice that water is already coming out the bottom. The reason for this is we watered it this morning, which is when you should water, and we're only shooting this in the mid-afternoon, so it's still quite full. The second way is called submersion. Now, all bonsai pots should have at least one hole at the bottom. The larger the pot, the more holes that it'll have. So the way that you water these is you put them in a container and slowly fill that container with water. You want to make sure that you don't overfill it, meaning water doesn't go above the lip of the pot. The way this works is water comes through the hole at the bottom and is absorbed through soil. Now, you want to let these guys sit for about 5 to 10 minutes to let them soak up water. Now, we'll let this guy go for a little bit longer while I tell you about watering trees in non-bonsai soil. So this is a Japanese maple, or several Japanese maples actually, and they're in a combination of bonsai soil and potting soil. The reasoning for this is in the Central Valley of California, where our nursery is located, visit us by the way, it becomes very hot and dry in the summer, and Japanese maples don't love that kind of weather. So we put them in a mixture of the soils to help them hold on to more water. Now the way you water these, the same way topically or through submersion, you just have to give it a lot longer to soak in. So what we'll typically do is fill it till it looks like it's about to overflow, and then we let it sit for a little while. You come back and let it fill up again and continue again. These guys will take a little bit longer to water, but the extra soil, or I should say the composition of the soil, keeps them a lot healthier. Now, it hasn't been about 5 or 10 minutes for this guy, but I want to show you that once you let it sit, you need to take it out and keep it in a different area. You do not want your tree to ever be in sitting water. That's how you get root rot. And you'll also notice after you've watered a tree either through submersion or through topically that they become a lot heavier. The reasoning for this is Akadama absorbs a hell of a lot of water and is very efficient about it. If you have more questions about that, watch our soil video. The species of a tree factors a lot into how often you water it. Pines and junipers tend to like a little bit less water than other trees. Deciduous trees, meaning ones that have broad leaves, usually require a lot more water because they give off water faster. So you have to consider these when you're watering. You also have to consider them when you are placing your trees around your property or house. You also have to consider water purity. Now, your local water table is going to tell you a lot of things. I've sold trees to gentlemen who have what's considered to be mineralized water, meaning there's high concentrations of minerals. Particularly his was iron, which means that he cannot use it for most varieties of trees. Now, if you're inside the city, slightly chlorinated water is not the worst thing for trees. If you want to be a little bit safer, you can let the water sit out overnight and then use it to water. What this does is it allows the chlorine to burn off, and then you have healthy, pure water again. Now, there's a lot of ways to test your water. Most gardening stores have a self-test kit, and there's even a few government agencies that'll help you test your water for free. Some of the things you need to stay away from are pots that don't have a drainage hole. Now, the reason this is bad is it allows the roots to just be in sitting water. The ceramic artist who made this wasn't familiar with bonsai, so she didn't know to put a drainage hole in it. Another thing you want to stay away from is having your tree in standing water for more than about 10 minutes. Now, what both of these scenarios create is an opportunity for root rot. Now, we hinted at root rot earlier in the video, but what it actually is the roots are in standing water, and because of this, opportunistic bacteria reproduce uncontrolled. They then attack the roots, causing the roots to rot, and the tree is unable to absorb a large amount of water. What the tree looks like is it looks like it's not getting enough water, which is ironic. Usually people tend to water more to compensate for the tree looking underwatered. This speeds up the process and eventually kills the tree. This is definitely something you want to stay away from. Now, typically speaking, if you have a tree that has root rot, you should water less and keep it in a cooler area, basically moderating it. And that's basically everything you need to know about watering. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like the video, find us on Facebook. You'll find links to everything in the description below. If you have ideas for future videos or have questions, put them in the comments section. And if you feel like it, visit our online store. We've got trees, pots, t-shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. Alright, I'll see you next time.